I wrote a movie actually with my son that's on Amazon Prime still, Amazon Prime Video. It's called Family Blues. And he didn't want to get involved as a producer, but so I produced it and we wrote, and making a movie was like a little 2 month period of my life that was unlike any other. It was very challenging, but interesting, but really exhausting. I don't think I ever felt as tired in my life
Oh
as I
my God.
did doing that movie. I mean, we had very long days, and but it was exciting. It was a change, but it kind of whet my
Right.
appetite a little. So I continued writing.
Hello, I am John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people that wonder where is Prince George in British Columbia, it's about 500 miles or 800 kilometers north of Vancouver, in the center of British Columbia, beautiful province. And we have a very, very, very special guest today. Her name is Jennifer Manocherian. And she is an amazing lady with an amazing background. And I always introduce myself. I'm 83, nearly 84 years young. That's what I call it. And I believe she may fall into the same category. And she looks absolutely great. She will tell us all about, but age means really to us, to her, as well as to me, and all the experience behind it. So, Jennifer, welcome to my show.
Thank you. You could be my younger brother.
It could be, yeah. I love it. I love it.
I got a little bit on you on that direction.
Yeah, can we say your
A
age?
few less grains in a few less grains in the sands of time.
Yeah. So,
The hourglass.
yeah. So Jennifer, for our guest, and you're very open about your age. You're 85 years young, as far as I'm concerned, and I say, like in my case, I was born in 1940, so you probably were born in 1938,
I was. When's your birthday?
November the 1st.
Oh, I have a sister born in 1940. Yeah, I was born a very long time ago.
Yeah. So now I'm going to show you a picture of you're an author. You've been on Broadway. You have been a producer. You have an amazing, amazing background in a story, and and we'll talk about that. I just want to show you a book that talks about age and what I think about it. So I'm going to show it to you. I'm writing a book right now. I've written about 4 of them. This is my last one that comes out in July. Can you see it?
I
Living
can. I'm
Young.
thinking about dying old. Yeah, I'm trying. The living young I get. I don't. I need you to explain dying old.
So, the reason for the book is there's a picture of me. I'm the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America, and
Amazing.
and so, but I believe that age is just a number. It's about the quality of life that counts, and I think both you and me are examples of that from what I've seen so far.
Well, I think it's. I think that well, it's a number. Not. It's not only a number because we obviously have a limited lifespan compared to people who are 50, whatever. But there was a time, I guess, when I was around 80, when I kept thinking about, oh my God, why am I doing all these projects that, in my age, they may never happen. And then I just did a complete U-turn on that and decided, why the hell not? Why not
Exactly.
keep going until I can't keep going? And I changed my thinking around it. I was so aware of my age, and then I stopped thinking about it. But I think you and I both are blessed with good health because without a lot of people our age don't have that.
Yeah.
I have very good DNA. My parents lived into their mid 90s. They both didn't mind alcohol. And
Right.
I'm not sure if that means they would have, that I'm going to not live as long as them because I don't drink, or because I'm going to give longer because I'm healthier. I'm not sure which way that's going to go.
Yeah, it's a good indicator. So in a way, my parents were in their 80s, young, early 80s, so I don't drink alcohol either. I don't smoke, and I'm very conscientious of health, physical health, as well as mental health. Very positive. I'm a go-go individual. I have lots of energy, and obviously I go to the gym, and I'm very careful about what I eat. I'm probably a vegan, and I do about 80-20, and mainly plant-based food that I eat. I stay away from processed foods. So if I go to a grocery store, I usually walk around the outside, not in the aisles where most of the processed foods are. And I don't know what is in it, so I stay away from that.
Well, I don't mind junk food. I mean, give me a good fried chicken, I'll be very happy. I have to say, speaking of DNA, my parents, I mean, I feel like my energy, in a way, I mean, maybe it's genetic. I kind of think it is, because my mother kept going until the end. But my parents, they didn't eat, listen, it was a different era. People didn't think about cholesterol and butter and all of those things. And they didn't do anything supposedly healthy in their lives, and they kept going. And but obviously, there's a lot of studies about it. I'm not as careful as you are by any means. I try to watch my weight, but I'm not a fanatic about eating. I don't eat red meat, but I haven't for many years. But
I don't either.
I just feel like my disposition. I always kind of, in a way, think of my disposition, or just, I have a natural. It was when I was growing up. I think it was called a shmoo. I don't remember. It was designed by Al Cap, who did Blondie. I don't know what. No, it wasn't Blondie. He did a cartoons, and I don't remember what it was. But he had uh, I think it was called a shmoo. And anyway, it was like this big rubber. It was like a punching bag thing, but you think of
Right,
it
right,
as weighted at the bottom. It was kind of like oval, and then at the top it was more narrow, kind of like
right.
a pear or something. And it was the kind of thing, I think, like, if you punch me over, I have that weight at the bottom of me, and my natural tendency is to come back up. So
Right.
having lived, a long life, obviously I've been punched a little.
Yeah.
I've had different hits in my life,
Yeah.
but my natural, I come back, because and I feel like, more than anything, probably what gives me the ability to be that way is that I'm not waiting for the big trip or big this or the big that. I can just enjoy, petting my cat in the morning, or, having breakfast. The little things in life are really give me pleasure all the time.
Keep it simple.
And so yeah, well, my life isn't so simple. It's complicated, but I
Right.
can, I have a lot of grandchildren. I can enjoy just so many little moments in my life that I feel like it helps. But I feel some people just can't get there. You just it. I do think your attitude is very. I don't know if it's inborn. What do you think?
I, my foundation is, I always say, is that attitude, avoid the negative, passion, whatever I do, I give it 150%. And work ethic is, I work harder even now still than anybody else does. And I usually get up at 5:30 in the morning, and then I have a number of companies. This is not about my companies, but I'm very active still. Obviously,
I
I'm
read your bio.
podcasting. Yeah, and then I love life, and I fly around a lot, and I look outside of the. When I usually sit by the windows of the planes that I fly in around across North America, do a lot of business in the United States, and I look outside. It says paradise. It's paradise. How could we find it any better? And and then at the same time, I try to stay fit and healthy. But I was a late bloomer in terms of being an author and doing a lot of other stuff. It took me till I was in my early 60s already when I started becoming much more active in a lot of other things, being a public speaker, an in-demand keynote speaker. I started thinking about writing books, and I wrote 4 of them so far. But as you well know, writing books isn't easy. So the first one that I did is this one here, Against All Odds. And I always say, I had so many people say to me, oh, you had such an interesting life. Why don't you write a book about it? And I thought about it for many years, and then I started, I stopped, I started, stopped, and then I thought by the time I was
it's a
in my
craft.
60s, yeah, if I don't do it now, it's not going to happen. So, but it's an autobiography, and if it is the first one you write, it took me 20 years to 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, 2 years to write it, and it's a kind of book that if you do it, autobiography, you can't write it and then say, I don't like it, I'll do another one. No, you only got one crack at it, and so that's how it kind of started, and I enjoyed it, and then did more, and but as you well know, and we want you obviously to talk about your writing experience as well, as to how did you come to the idea of doing it, and how did it start, and how did it work for you?
Well, I was just thinking about what you said about, when you do an autobiography, you can't take it back after you've written it. But it's almost when you write a novel, it's fiction. So in a
Yeah,
way, it's I I think the challenge could be, it's still a craft, knowing how to make a book that's interesting. No matter what, you have to have an arc with each chapter, and it has to have some of the same rules would apply, but
right,
it's a different type of thing. So I would think when you write something that personal, it's a different experience. I mean, there was
right,
a time, actually, it was after my mother died, which was in 2000, where I had taken some memoir writing courses, just because I was kind of, I don't know, I was having a hard time, and I just took some memoir. I was writing about my parents and things that were important to me. And one of the things I started writing about had to do with one of my children and something we'd gone through. And I was in a writing class that had feedback from other people, and we would write, we'd read their work, they'd read our work, that type of thing. And some of the feedback it was very hard when it came to getting feedback, but it wasn't negative for me in terms of my writing, but it was in terms of my story and some of the things that had happened and some of the players, shall we say.
right,
And you feel so personally attacked, or not attacked, because I wasn't attacked, but it was some of my choices, let's say, were questioned.
right,
And I figured, no, thank you. It's one thing if it's just me, but when you write about book, you're writing about not just yourself, but your family and other people. And
right,
I couldn't do it. But when you
yeah,
write a novel, you have a much more license. It's not, if people don't like it, maybe they don't like my writing, maybe they don't like my characters. Well, I
right,
mean, I want people to like it, but it's not as personal.
exactly,
But writing is, to me, something I've always liked to write. I've never not wanted to write. And I think it's a family. I mean, I come from a family, it's a pretty literate family. Everybody read. We were all readers. That's Instead of talking to each other, we would read. And we wrote. My parents both wrote. I never knew until after my mother died, and everything was in their apartment. And I found some old manuscripts. Both of my parents were trying to write, the great American novel that would free them financially to
right,
educate their 3 daughters and
right,
not have to live a more conventional life. But they didn't achieve that. So they did have to live. My father was a patent attorney. And my mother wrote, but she wrote cookbooks and garden books. And she actually had one of the first cooking schools in New York. So, I mean, she had a very good career, but it wasn't, in creative writing in the same sense that we're talking about. But
right.
it's kind of in our family DNA, writing.
So
And
the last name, does that originate in Central Europe somewhere?
well, my husband is Iranian.
Okay.
My heritage is my mother's family came to America like in the 1600s. My father, we may be visited by one of my cats in a minute.
Yeah, no worries.
Just warning you.
No worries.
One of my father was born in England. He came in his late 20s to America.
Okay.
So I'm pretty I'd say Eastern European is my background, not. And then I married a Middle Easterner.
Yes.
So
And then you have 5 daughters or 5 children?
no, 5 children. I have
Right.
I have 2 daughters, 3 sons,
Right.
and they're all adult. They're all cooked, and I have 15 grandchildren,
My
and,
goodness, right?
and I got one, and I'm about to become a great grandmother in a couple of months. So
Isn't it
I have a
beautiful?
rich family life. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great. It's nice. But I've
S-
been
s-
working since the year I had my youngest child, when I was about 34, 35. I've been working ever since. And I think one could argue that before when I had 5 children and I was more stay at home, I was still working. I mean,
Yeah.
5 children's a lot of children. So
Yeah.
I've been very, very multitasking since I was about 20, I think. I mean, it's just
But,
I've had a very complex life since I was very young.
so were their ages all close together?
No, no. Well, yes, yes and no. I have an age range of 14 from my oldest to my youngest.
Right.
So here's one of my cats.
I love
My
them.
Yeah, they're gorgeous cats. They're Egyptian
Yeah.
mouse. George, where are you?
I
Say hello.
love.
No, he's not going to.
We have cats, we have dogs, so
I've also
we love
cats and
animals.
dogs.
And
We've
horses.
had everything. when
Yeah.
my kids were growing up, I mean, other than farm animals, we've had just about everything.
Yeah.
But I was 21. I turned 21 in the hospital when my first child was born, and then I had three more under 7 years, I guess. They were somewhat scattered. I mean, it took me from my first to my second was about 2.5 years, and then 3.5 years, and then bing bang, I had two in a row. I had Irish twins, so to speak. And then 7 years later, I had my youngest. I always knew I wasn't finished, and I loved having children. I loved giving birth to children. I loved being pregnant. Um, it was lovely.
At the same
But I
time,
also had this
yeah, sorry,
drive. I
Jim.
had this drive to be out in the world too.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You're a very active individual and had energy, which is unique for people our age. I can say I'm pretty much
Right.
the same as you are, from an
Right.
age perspective. But I get a lot of people saying to me, how can you do all the things that you're doing? Now, I have something that you likely are familiar with, but I was going to mention it later to you, is that it took me till I was 1957 when I discovered that I was ADHD.
Yeah,
And
I read about that.
yeah,
Well, I'm
and
sure I
I
am
also
too. I've never been diagnosed, but I'm sure I am.
I also wrote a book about it, ADHD Unlocked, and I call it a superpower. And so it certainly
That's
changed
interesting.
and then academically, I was not a success story either. In Holland, I failed grade 3, I failed grade 7 3 times. And they said, what are you going to do with this guy? Send him to mentally challenged school? And my parents were beautiful people, said no. So we'll get him a career as working or a trade. And so they sent me to a furniture factory, and I became a furniture maker. And
How do you like that?
yeah,
I would imagine in 1957 nobody'd ever heard of ADHD.
no,
I mean, I don't. I would doubt it was diagnosed. They were just, this child they couldn't control, or overactive, or whatever they would call you.
All
I
the
was that way
above, right?
too.
Or maybe just
Yes,
not,
I'm sure I was.
like in my case, he said, well, he's dumb. He can't finish who fails grade 3, really, so, and then
Well,
grade
let me
7.
just tell you something, John. When one of my kids, and it was in the early '60s, he was in first grade. Well, it was mid '60s in first grade, and he had certain learning issues, which a lot of kids have learning problems, whatever.
Yeah.
And the psychologist at that school brought me in, and she said something about children with minimal brain damage. That's how they labeled it in those days, minimal
Oh,
brain damage. Well, I started crying. I was so upset, and it's they didn't really understand the fact that some kids took them a little longer, and they needed they had certain learning disabilities, and once you understood what it was, they were right back on track with everybody else. But it was
exactly.
very shocking the way I was introduced to the idea of learning disabilities and ADHD, because and in fact, my mother, I mean, listen, I don't know if I'm going way off track here,
No,
but
no.
my mother was very, very motivated and very successful all her life, I think in schooling too. But her younger brother, my mother thinks now, not now, because she's not alive to say that, but when she was alive, she thought, particularly when the whole idea of learning disorders came into our vocabulary, she assumed that her brother must have had it, because he was one of these kids who also couldn't be schooled. He was terribly restless, and he would set a church on fire or do something. But it's something that's become more now. Now these labels are very popular, and people know what they mean, and kids get diagnosed very early, and they get treated very early, and it's not such a difficulty.
Still stigma
But
attached
you're
to it,
saying you
though.
didn't make it, but you reframed it. It was something that you used,
I
and you
said
were able to make it for
it's
yourself.
a superpower.
Power.
And so if they look at me and all the things that I do, even still now, between the companies and then writing books and then being very active in the community and then podcasting and doing all the other things. I'm a go-go guy. And people say to me, how can you do all of this at your age? I said, it's ADHD. That's why I can do it. And I believe that
And good health.
it gives me that ability to have energy and do all the things that I do.
Well, it serves as a role model for younger people,
Yeah.
because I mean, I've found that, because a lot of people think you're put out to pasture at a certain age, but I don't even think I'd know how to slow down, because I love what I do. I'm not. I mean, my days are so full. I never have enough time in a day to do everything I have to do,
And I do
and
exactly the
and it's
same, Jennifer.
great.
I feel the same, So the interesting
Yeah,
part about it
we're
that you
just
may
lucky.
find, yeah. So when I found out, it was in January of 1957, that 1997, that I already was 57 years old then. That I walked into a store here in Prince George. I never quite know. I always knew there was something that was with me that I didn't quite know what it was, but I was not good at structured learning. And I picked up this book, and the book's title was Driven to Distraction. It was written by Dr. Halliwell, and he wrote 18 books, 5 about distraction. He's a doctorate and a PhD, and he is ADHD. And so I picked up his book by coincidence in a store here. He wrote it in 1993. I picked it up in 1997. I've always had it. I wrote in the book when I saw it. Now I finally know who I am. And then I podcasted him. Your podcast number is 234. If you have an opportunity, look at On the Brink podcasting by John A. Brink, number 203, and I'm podcasting Dr. Halliwell. Can you believe it? All those years later, nearly 40 years later, and I had him on my podcast, and I always believed when I first found out that I had ADHD, I went to Google. I felt ashamed about it initially because it implied potentially a mental disorder of some sort. The more I found out about it, the more I found out that probably 8% of the population have the benefit of ADHD. And when I interviewed Dr. Halliwell, and I mentioned it to him that by then I thought 8% is very low, it's probably more like 20%. He said, no, John, it's probably more than 25%. And then the other part that I found out, and I interacted with him on, that I found that 50% of the successful entrepreneurs and CEOs, and the operative is successful ones, probably 50%, I believed, are ADHD. He said, no, John, probably more than 75%. So
yeah, I believe that. I'm listening to Elon Musk's story on Audible, and
right.
he, Steve Jobs, all these, and I thought you had said originally 1957, because in those days people didn't know much about it, but in 1997 it was definitely, so I had misunderstood you.
Yeah.
One of my sons who has it, he had donated some time, and I don't know, was involved with a school in the city area. I don't remember exactly what it was about, but where it was for kids with learning disorders, and he was given an honorary, he was given a gala, like a Man of the Year award or something, and he came and he talked to these kids, and he addressed it as being like, he didn't use the word superpower, but he said the same thing. It was what had helped him in life. It was like that, that single-mindedness and energy in back of it, which it's a drive you have. And, it's funny, I'm going to own that now myself, because I never thought of it that way. But it kind of, I think I know it. My kids all know it about me, but I never thought of it kind of in the way in which it's part of my drive. It's just who I am. I can't really, I can't change it. But I don't know that I think it's a superpower most of the time. But I think that there are people who are crushed by it. There's a lot of young children, they think they're dumb, they think they're stupid. It doesn't, unless they're in an environment where the adults and the teachers and stuff around them can identify it and help them see it as a positive. It's not going to be their superpower. It's going to make them feel like a failure.
I'm very vocal about it, Jennifer. Wherever the opportunity presents itself, I speak about it. I speak about it on my podcast. I write about it, and wherever I have the opportunity, and I do a lot of presentations to schools and universities, colleges, and all the other kind of things. I love public speaking. I'm a good speaker. I'm full of energy. And so, so then I tell my story about all the things that I do, including in Europe, born during the war, blah, 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 all those other things, then dreaming of going to Canada, blah, 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 but also about ADHD. And then by the time I'm done presenting and speaking about what made me successful, which I believe is understanding ADHD and the combination of how it affects me and the things that it allows me to do, is that by the time I'm done, a lot of people would say, darn, I wish I had it too. Because it allows me to, by things that I like. But it allows me to do.
It can be hard to focus. It can be hard to focus when you have ADHD. You're putting it in a very positive light, and that's good. But it also can be a challenge.
It can be, yeah.
But
understanding it is the key.
But to the extent that, you also, there's other things you need in back of it. I mean, you have to have imagination and
Yeah.
desire to do things, and willingness to learn, and I'm not afraid to take things on. I I mean, if I were to talk about my book for a minute, I
Yeah.
cannot say it was my life. I thought one day I'm gonna write a novel. In fact, I never thought I would write a novel. It wasn't even on my mental radar. but but when I mean, it was a process of getting there, and I don't know if you want to hear about that, but
Yeah. 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 I want to hear
I
about
made
it.
that decision. When I made that decision, I mean, nothing could have stopped me. I mean, in fact, I'm on my we're writing trying to write a second one now, and I feel that same way. I'm supercharged about it. I can't, it's all those characters are just living inside of me all the time as I develop them and develop the story.
So you developed when you obviously already was someone in your family, as you said, both your parents had ideas about writing, and then you already indicated earlier you were a good writer, but to write a book was a whole different step. So what?
Well, yeah. Well, writing, I mean, writing could be, even if I mean, it may sound, I don't know if it sounds silly, but even as I got, maybe not when I was younger, but I care about how I express myself.
Right.
So even if it might be writing a letter, remember we used to write letters?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. No kidding.
remember
Yeah.
in those days, you, I might I might want to make sure I worded it properly. And
Yeah.
then I actually, when the first thing I tried to do actually even before I had I was around 30 at the time. It was before I'd had my fifth child. And I actually, I had the women's movement was in, wide, had kind of split America or the whole world upside, including me, and kind of had me in turmoil. And I knew I wanted to do something, but I had kids, and I didn't want to turn them over to somebody else. And so that business of women thinking they can have it all, which is kind of a joke because it's a very, very, very challenging to do everything well at the same time. You just can't.
Right.
But I did, so I figured, okay, my kids are mostly in school at that time. And I wrote a few articles for a local magazine. So that was my first venture into it. But I stopped very quickly because at that time, my two youngest were in nursery school, which was like 3 hours a day. So I would go to my desk and I'd sit down and by the time I got myself focused and ready to start writing, ding, it was time to pick them
Yeah.
pick them up. And it was just, I mean, I just was I didn't want to deal with the conflict. So I realized writing isn't not for me at this stage of my life.
Right.
So I did a bunch of other things. I mean, I've done a lot of different things, as you've mentioned in my life. I did some public relations for a time. I was a family therapist. I did divorce mediation. And then for many years, I was involved as a theater producer. But while I was doing that, I was also kind of moonlighting as writing. I'd written a couple of screenplays. In fact, I had a screenplay that I wrote a very long time ago. I don't know how long ago. But I was in theater at the time because I had met somebody who I had told about it. So I know it must have been during those years. And he actually had wanted to option it and possibly make a movie out of it. And I don't know, I did something. I have no idea if a movie ever would have been made of it because a lot of things get optioned that never get made.
Right.
But he wanted I thought of it like as a freebie, a period of time to see if he could get financing and stuff before the option began. For what I thought, no, I don't. I want them. If he's going to option it, I want him to option it. So I said no to the deal, and he said no to me, and that was the end of that. But my desire to write. I wrote other plays just on my own. Then I also, when I got, and as a theater producer, I mean, this is a very, I'm really going to ramble. So I don't know if you mind if I kind of tell
No,
you the
no,
story
no,
of how I got.
no. I think it's
But
interesting.
theater producing, yeah, theater producing, at the time I got involved, which is in the 80s, excuse me, and it was quite different from what it is today. I mean,
Right.
first of all, now after COVID, it's really tough because it's very hard. The costs of putting on a show are just insane. There's a new musical that just opened, and I heard there's like $25 million just to put the production on, and the running costs are over $1 million.
My
How,
God.
unless you're a mega hit, you'll never see that money back. So
No.
from a money making point of view, it's impossible. And then to raise money and to risk other people's money, it's just a hard business. So
Yeah.
the bottom line is that more and more people got involved at financially. So for less and less money, you could become an above title producer. And so they got more and more people at less and less money and with less and less involvement. And to me, the involvement was what interested me. To sit around the table and to talk about the marketing of the show and
Right.
all the different things that a producer has to do once a show's open in particular. So, but when I first got involved, it was different, and I felt much more involved in what I was doing, and I was enjoying it. But the less involved I got, the more I kind of got restless, and I knew I couldn't go back to my former profession because once you walk away from something, it isn't like the doors are there. Come on back,
Yeah.
right? I'd
Right.
given up my practice, and I'd walked away from uh, a situation where things were. It was really my as a family therapist and a divorce mediator. I was working at the same clinic, and I was on faculty for both areas. And I'd been kind of grandfathered in because I didn't have the right degree in many ways for what I was doing, but it was all going well, and I kind of turned my back on it. I mean, it was like a decision I made for something I thought I had always wanted to do, and I got into a field of the entertainment business, which had always been kind of, it was like the crystal ball kind of, I don't know how to
Right.
explain it, but I
Yeah.
had an attraction for it that had very little basis in reality and knowing enough about what it was. In many ways, with my big family and with my husband who wasn't interested in theater and who was a businessman and who understood the financial realities of theater, it wasn't the best mix with my life. But at that point, I'd walked away from a profession, from two fields that I was quite involved with, and so and it was very hard initially. I mean, I felt very, very lost in the beginning, but over the years, I got more involved and I learned more, and I started wanting to be more active and more actively involved. And one of the things I did, so one of the things I did was I wrote a movie actually with my son that's on Amazon Prime still, Amazon Prime Video. It's called Family Blues, and he didn't want to get involved as a producer, but so I produced it and we wrote and making a movie was like a little 2 month period of my life that was unlike any other. It was very challenging, but interesting, but really exhausting. I don't think I ever felt as tired in my life
Oh
as I
my God.
did doing that movie. I mean, we had very long days, and but it was exciting. It was a change, but it kind of whet my
Right.
appetite a little. So I continued writing, but like moonlighting, because I didn't stop. I mean, I've been involved in over 35 productions in theater, so it's not like I gave up theater,
Right.
but I got my creative jolly, shall we say, in
Yeah.
writing. I wrote the book of a couple of musicals, and we're working. We actually had a meeting yesterday. We're working. It's a team I have with my composers and myself. Dan Martin and Michael Biello are the composing team. I have one's the composer, one's the lyricist, and there's a director we're working with, Bill Castellino. And we worked. There's a musical that we had. It had a couple of productions. One of them in New York and
Wow.
at what's called a nonprofit theater. It wasn't a commercial production. But
Right.
then we decided to film it for streaming. And we did that. and that's out. That's also available to be watched if anybody's interested. On It's called Marry Harry, and it's on Streaming Musicals. And that was an incredible experience too. And in fact, the productions we did, we had another director before Bill got involved. And every time you do a production, I don't know if you've ever had any experience like that, but it's like you leave your life, you create other little family, and you're involved, you're auditioning people, you're making changes in the script, you're watching the rehearsals. It's a wonderful process. It's very exciting. And then
Amazing.
the time comes when the production's going to open and people are going to be looking at it and judging it. And I hate that process. It's like at that point, I become very negative about what I'm doing because it's so hard to be judged. I hate that process. But it doesn't stop me from doing it because it's like I have blinders on. So one of the one of the little musicals we did, we actually did it during COVID, and that was an experience in itself. It's called Cockroaches in Cologne, and that's actually available for free. You can see it on YouTube, and it's fun. But again, it's these little chunks of time I have out of the rest of my life where I'm part of this team, and it's like a little family when you're doing it. I love that. When I'm doing it, I really love it. But but I was when COVID came along, what really happened in my life, it was the biggest change, was that the theater closed. I mean, New York theater shut down,
Yeah.
and it shut down all over the place. I don't
Yeah.
mean it's unique, but I had an office in New York City, and because we were not we were not a necessary business. There was a word that I'm just losing right now, but Governor Cuomo had shut down any business
Right.
that wasn't necessary. So I had to close my office and started working from home, and which has actually turned out to be great. And I haven't gone back. I mean, but I had this chunk of time, so I wasn't at that time. The musical we were working on, that we're still working on now, but we're trying to do it instead as a theater piece. We want to do it as a episodic streaming musical, something a little different. And what it's
Right.
going to be is to be determined. But we were working very actively on that at the time that COVID shut us down. I mean, we would have these all day meetings. The director would be meeting with us, who were the writers on it. We had a whiteboard in the office, and we were working on it. And then all of a sudden, we had to stop. So I had been. Now I'm going to get to my book, and if I'm talking too much, please stop me.
No, it's good.
All right. So what happened? So I had also been another little moonlighting thing I did. I had taken up short story writing. A friend of mine who had a writing group at my local library was teaching a group every 2 weeks for 2 hours a week, and that was maybe 8, 9 years ago. And I said, I don't think I could ever write that way. I'm used to writing more in script or in
Right.
dialogue. And she said, well, why don't you take the class and see what it's like? So I took this class and I was hooked. I loved it. But so I found that I could write short stories, but I'm thinking, oh my God, if I write a 5,000 page story, I need the Pulitzer or something. I never thought I had it in me to write a novel. And I was also teaching. I was teaching screenwriting at that time through somebody else I knew who was head of a screenwriting program at a local university, and they had an adult division. So I started teaching as well. So I got involved with a bunch of people who were teaching, and we all became a group to one another because we all do writing. We all do narrative writing. And so I would say that they would talk about their writing that they were doing. And I would say, well, how many words is a novel? How long does it have to be? They say the minimum is like 60,000 words. Well, that was just like telling me, go out and climb Mount Everest or something. It was just unthinkable that I could do that. I mean, I couldn't imagine it. But what happened is this same group, it was like about 6 to 8 of us who are like the nucleus of this group. Every year we have like a writing retreat, and everybody will be working on something. And usually there'll be something that'll be like on the front burner for me, whether it's a play I'm doing or something. But at that time, I had decided I was going to think about putting together some of these short stories I've been writing in this little group. And it came to me, maybe there's a way of putting them all together under one heading. I didn't think that they merited being just short stories by themselves. My husband kept saying, "We'll do a book of short stories." I said, "They're not good enough." No. I have pretty high standards for myself. I said, "No, I can't. I'm not going to do that." But I started to see, and this writing group of mine also did, a thread. Maybe there can be one way of putting all of this together as a novel with different characters in it. Wait. So that was kind of how it happened. And then when uh, COVID came along and I was working from home, I had all this time. And the other things I were doing were like back burner. And as we've talked about, this energy, this
Yeah.
drive, my ADHD, or whatever, I always get the letters mixed up. That's part of the issue too. That's part of the, um, I'm thinking, anyway, that's part of the syndrome.
Yeah.
So I started thinking, I'm gonna write this novel. I'm gonna figure out how to write this novel. By God, I'm gonna do it. And I started it. It was a tremendous amount of work because I had a main character, and the book is called Alphabet, and she's kind of this old woman, older. She's 95. She's like, for us, way up there,
Yeah.
and she she's like a matriarch, and her husband has died, and she has a family, and she's got she has a very strong will. Were certainly elements of my mother that I took from her, and maybe
Yeah.
myself, because she's a strong woman, and but there's other people in her life. So she wakes up one morning, and she makes a decision that night to give a dinner party for this small group of people left in her life, including her caretakers, her neighbor. Just it's about 7 or 8 people, and nobody knows why she wants to do it. So in the process of this book, and it all obviously culminates in the dinner party, you get to know all the different people who are part of her life. And that's where I come back to the short stories I've written. Took these characters that I had written, and then I had to figure out how to integrate them all into her life and into this story. So it was organic. So they belonged there, and they knew each other, and they all had connections. And so it was hard. It was a big challenge, and there was a lot I had to learn. But my writing group, I mean, I would encourage anybody who ever wants to write to have a writing group because you need perspective.
Right.
And I wouldn't burden everybody with drafts of it. I only burdened my group with maybe 2 drafts, and each time I felt like, okay, I'm ready for some feedback. But I
Right.
would get feedback like it reads like a play or it reads like a movie, and I think, oh, okay, right. That's why wouldn't it? Because that's what I'm more used to doing. I have to
Exactly.
learn how to write a novel. The way I sometimes word is I have to be the camera. I have to take the reader into that room and have them see everything that the characters are seeing or the actions that they're doing. So as they're talking, I'm moving my hands. I can see that. As they're talking, you can see them moving their hands. You describe it. So there was so much I had to learn just in terms of, I mean, I'm a reader, so I know when I'm reading, I'm not just reading dialogue. I'm reading a lot of other stuff. But I had to figure out how to weave all the backstory, how the people integrated with each other, and
Right.
just visualizing them and creating the setting.
You
It
had to
was,
create
it's a
it, right?
yeah,
You
to
had to
create that
create.
world.
Yeah. So now, have you got a copy of the book close by that you could kind of hold
I
up? Is it
don't.
is it
Oh my God!
available? No, it's okay.
Can you imagine? No, I do probably.
Yeah, you can look
I
for it.
don't. Oh yes, I do. I
Yeah.
do.
Okay. Good. Good.
Wow.
So the title
But
is.
this is Alphabet. Now this is a hard copy. which is not for sale. It's sold in paperback, in Audible, or in ebooks.
It's also
And I
an
don't know. I'm having
Audible.
trouble. Yeah, I'm having
Yeah.
trouble understanding where your camera is and how to
Yeah,
do
I
this
can see
properly.
it.
But anyway,
Uh, Move it slightly over
so
to
there's
your
all right.
right.
Let me move
Yeah.
my finger.
Yeah, I can see it.
My
We can see
right.
it. So it's available in soft copy and all the major medias, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and
And then
then you
it's
did
about
an
a hundred
Audible.
and it's 325 300 no 285 pages of text. So
So
I
about
got way behind.
60,000,
I got like
70,000 words.
75,000 words. I
Right.
did that. I still can't believe it, but I did it.
Now the
And
other part, Jennifer, that I find, when I started with my
all right, I'm
book, is
far away.
that,
Bed's going down.
yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate that. And for
Put
the
bed
people
away.
watching, they can look for it. So, but what I find is the writing style, what I do is I'm a storyteller. That's what I do. And I do that
Well,
in my
that's how you
speaking
get people to care. Yeah.
and presenting, but also in my books. That's how I write my books. I'm a storyteller, and I like to do that. And but as same as you, it takes time to acquire the skill sets because there's so many things are so important. What is the size of the book? What is the font? What kind of paper? What should it look like?
Oh,
All of that.
absolutely. Well, do you like my title and my
I
cover?
like it. I like alphabet. I like it. So because it's
I
it's innovative and it's a picture of you in a very
No,
interesting
not
way.
me.
It's not you.
It's not
Okay,
me.
who
No,
is it?
and actually, I work with the design people of the publisher. We worked with them. And I made a lot of changes on it because having been in theater, I know I have a very good eye for something that grabs your attention. Poster to me, you have a first impression. If you particularly, I'm not in bookstores, but if you go into a bookstore, you're looking at the pile of books, and the
Yeah,
title is going to attract you, and the artwork.
no question.
Though I
Yeah,
have to say, I I've had a second thought about it since I don't know, it came to me recently that for younger readers, they may be very put off by the older woman in the title. They may think it's just a book about an old lady, and it's about much more than about an old lady. I have the characters in the book who drive the story. They're from their early 20s to all different ages because they
right,
each have their own chapters, and it's one of these multiple point of view books.
right.
But storytelling, to me, and this is what I focus on too in my teaching. And it's true with your stories, and part of your stories are your story. But
Correct.
it's about you got to know your characters. Your characters have to be people. They got to be flawed.
Right.
They've got to be interesting. They've got to be people. You don't you don't always have to like them, but there has to be something there. I have one character who's not very likable, but by the and she's the person who's the basis of my second novel
Okay.
because because she's damaged. Let's put it that way. Something in life has hurt her. And
Yeah.
so if you can start to kind of be empathetic of her and care about her. So I mean, I work so hard on my own writing and helping other people to write to really really know your characters. And a lot
Right.
of what I do too is and is I when I'm writing scenes sometimes I'm talking to my characters or I'm I'm making sure that what they're saying and what they're feeling is is real. I mean, to me,
Right.
authenticity is like the keystone of what I care about. It's like it
Yeah, I
has to
agree.
be, they have to be three-dimensional people. I mean, you can read books that are bestsellers, and I mean, maybe I sound really snobby, and maybe I am, but I'm kind of an intellectual snob in that sense, where I can read a bestseller that can be so poorly written, and the characters can be so poorly developed. They're like not cartoon characters necessarily, but they're like stock characters. They're not
Yeah.
they're not flesh and blood people, and
Right.
that's really what I aim for. I really aim for people that the characters I'm writing about are very real, and I'm happy to say most of the reviews have said that the characters are well written because that's really what I aim for.
So the second book, you're working at least mentally, and have you started writing
Oh,
that book?
oh yeah, I would say I'm well more than halfway through.
Right.
I know where the story's going. I've done a lot of writing of it. In fact, I mean, believe I've also last year I also a movie that I'd been working on for many years that I had optioned a book, and then ultimately I wound up writing the script, and then finally after I mean COVID got in the way too, but we got a director. I had a producer. I'm a co-producer of it, and we made the movie last year,
Oh my
and
goodness.
that also yeah, it's a movie that's it's done now. It's past post production. We filmed it in Minnesota in May,
Okay.
and it's been enormously time consuming because as a producer, I am involved in every aspect of it,
Right.
and so between from the time I finished this book and we put this book out, which was at the in September of last year. I've also, at the same time, I've been teaching. I'm on a few boards that I care about. I also have a big family, as I mentioned. I also am working on that musical I mentioned. I'm also teaching. And I've also had to learn in this past year how to market a book. I didn't sign on to become a marketer. I signed on to write a book. But damn it, my life has been consumed with now having to sell the book. And to be honest
But
with you, if I wasn't going to write another book, I'd say the hell with it. I mean, this isn't what I want to be doing all the time, trying to figure out how to, to write the newsletter and to do all the social media. I mean, I've had it. I just want to be writing. That's all I want to be doing right now.
but now you're also on podcast, a
Yes,
podcaster,
well, I love
and
talking to people like you. I mean, that's a pleasure for me. I'm a people person. I like that. But I had to
so am
figure
I.
out how to do podcasts, how to find podcasts. Um, and that's been a trial and error because some of the podcasts, have like 4 listeners or something. I mean, it can be a waste of time. Um, but it's been, I've had a lot of trouble and the movie is still something that's very actively
Right.
trying to get into festivals, and we're working on our strategy, and it's still something where it's not a huge part of my life, but it's a part of what I'm doing. Plus the teaching, I mean, the boards that I'm doing are things I really care about, like
Right.
getting young
Now,
people to register to vote. I care about citizenship. Um,
now, there
so
you are, Jennifer, at 85, and I can say that because I'm nearly 84. So the two of us have lots of energy. We're doing lots of things. We are apparently both ADHD and loving it because that you couldn't be doing all the things that you're doing unless you were, at least not in my opinion. And I'm very vocal about it. And I say to a lot of people, that, I get that question very, very often and say, how can you do all the things that you're doing other than the fact that I say it's because ADHD? But the other part is my foundation is that I'm a storyteller, for one. I love to write books. I'm good at my businesses, and not bragging about it, but I have about 10 different businesses, and they're all quite successful, and I like that. And then I love podcasting because what is so unique about it is that although I'm also a speaker and give keynotes, but they take so much time for me, is that if I'm in the States or in Canada doing keynotes, it usually takes me 2 days to get there, to get ready for it, and blah blah blah.
right.
But with podcasting, I know that you are in the New York area. I'm in the other side of the continent, in North America, in Prince George, British Columbia, and there we are. Two individuals that are in their mid 80s, full of energy. You look great for your age. I get comments that's what they say to me. I can't believe you are in the mid 80s and do all the things that you do. I love it, and what keeps me going and what keeps me fit is likely the energy that I use for all the things that I love to do, as you do, and directing the family and doing all the things that you do, writing the books and all the things that you dream about. Those are the things that keep me going. Those are the things that keep me healthy. I think about fitness and all the other things. I have to stay fit. You look great, you look fit, and for your age. And so as you look forward, if you ask me that question, then I would say I want to do more of what I've been doing. I like what I'm doing, and I'm going to enjoy it as long as I have the ability to do it.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm looking behind you. Oh, here comes one of my cats. I'm looking behind you, and the two words that are the biggest are passion and dream. And to
Correct.
be honest with you, I passion is a strong word, but I get up in the morning anxious to start doing what I like to do. And I have a need to have a full creative life. Often I write I mean, in fact, today I did it. Some of my writer friends, we write together we go on Zoom, and we may not even talk to each other, but suppose we have a question about something or an
Right.
issue. I
Right.
love the community of it.
Right.
Um, I'm part of a community of it. And I also have my family, and my family's, it's my lifeblood. I mean, my
Sure.
kids, my grandchildren. I mean, but I kind of, for the most part, on Sunday, for years now, on Sundays, it's like our open house. I wake up in the morning, I cook. I don't know who's coming. If my kids will say to me, if I have to tell you what I'm doing on Sunday, then we're not coming. I say,
Yeah.
it's okay, come or don't come. So
Yeah.
I just
Whatever.
cook. It could be 4 people, it could be 25. So I wake up and I cook. And then whoever comes, comes. And and I mean, like, well, I didn't do Easter. My daughter-in-law did. Any of my kids can have any of the holidays. I'm happy to give them up. But if I have to do them, I'll do them. It's fine. But there's a lot of us. Our family's almost 30 people by now,
Yeah.
and with the in-laws, and now we got a baby coming, which is neat. But but I'm also involved. I mean, I don't do a lot of teaching, but what I do, I really love doing. But one of the things I really care about are causes. I mean, one of the things, I mean, your country's different, but our country's in so much turmoil. And it's a very, very divided country. And it's something that's a very big part of my brain, my mindset these days. I really care. When I was young, I couldn't wait to vote. I mean, it was like a privilege. Now kids don't know a damn thing about they probably don't even know how many members of Congress there are, how many senators there are. There's just no citizenry has kind of gone out the window. So I'm very involved in a cause called 18 by Vote, where we try to get young people to register to vote, just so they can get. It's their lives they're banking. They're the ones who are going to have to deal, not me, but with the
Yeah.
global warming, everything else. And then there's another. I mean, I'm involved in a couple of other, but another one that I really care about also is called the Peace Studio, and it's all about trying to encourage different forms of artistic expression, getting messages of kindness, of positive messages, and talking about stories. It's all about storytelling, narrative storytelling in different forms of trying to get, because more than anything else, you get through to people on a one-on-one basis. And
So
it's all very grassroots.
so what I
So you
like
get,
what I like about us, Jennifer, both you and myself, we have the same energy, the same feeling about things surrounding us. I feel the same as you do about Canada, but also the United States. I watch it closely in terms of the politics and all those things. I probably know
You can
more
take a
about,
subway and be shot.
yeah, and,
It's
and
just
a lot of
awful.
things. But on the other hand, looking at us, you and me, in our mid 80s, I know many, many people that are probably in their 60s that have said, okay, I'm done. I can't do anything anymore. I lay on the couch and I watch TV and wait to die or whatever, and both of us have energy. And as long as I can, which I do now, get up in the mornings, 5:30. I'm always in the hurry, and I'm always looking forward to every single day. And I love where we live and what we do, and I intend to keep doing more of it, both in terms of writing, speaking, talking about issues that are important to me and what I believe other people, and that's I'm going to do that as long as I can possibly live it. On the other things, the things that are important to me are the things that are the simple things. I don't need a whole lot of money, although we're doing fine. I have a family. That to me is extremely important, and I like to stay healthy and fit, and all of those kind of things. So, but
Well, John,
Jennifer,
I'm not gonna meet you at 5:30 in the morning ever.
Jennifer, it
That is
was a
not my
pleasure.
not my time of day.
It was a pleasure to have you on my podcast, and a privilege.
Thank
And
you.
we had an amazing conversation, and I hope you liked it. This podcast will be available tomorrow. Actually, we do not much editing to it. It is what it is, and we'll make it available to you and your friends by tomorrow morning, and that's what we do.
Well, maybe one of your viewers will actually buy one of my books, which they can
Yeah,
get online, or they can go
yeah.
to my website.
Yeah. Make sure alphabet.
Yeah,
That's
we have
and
Muppet.
that is the cat number 2, and it's a sweetie,
That's
isn't
number
he?
2.
Yeah, we
Didn't
love
want to
them.
stay.
Jennifer, it was a pleasure and a privilege.
It was a pleasure for me. And I want to just say something, and I'm sure you've been told this before. Who you sound like.
No,
Have you been told who you sound like?
no,
No?
no.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh my God, Arnold.
I
Arnold, I want him on
I
my
swear to you.
podcast.
Oh, definitely. He's actually a
Yeah,
really interesting guy.
yeah.
And and you
So,
have to just listen to him talk. Listen to him on a podcast, and you sound so much like him.
can you imagine if we both on the podcast? And I'm a bodybuilder too, right?
Yeah, get him on your podcast. He would
Yeah,
love
I'm
that.
trying to get him. If you know him, tell him, hey,
I
Arnold.
don't go to his agent.
Yeah,
He would
we're
love
doing
it.
that. Jennifer,
All right.
a pleasure.
Thank you.
You take care,
Thank you.
and thank you for being my guest.
My pleasure. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.